The sound of rain echoed softly through the alleyways of downtown Los Angeles. Beneath a flickering streetlight, a little girl sat on a torn piece of cardboard, her small fingers strumming the worn strings of a broken guitar. Her name was Kesha Williams, just 9 years old, barefoot, her hair tangled by wind and time. Yet her voice carried something that stopped strangers in their tracks. It wasn't just singing. It was a cry from the soul, a sound filled with both pain and hope. That night, she sang not for fame, but for food. Every coin that fell into her cup meant one more meal, one more day of survival. When the last note faded into the rain, a black van pulled up near the corner. From it stepped a man in an expensive suit, polished shoes, slick hair, and a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. He was Richard Brennan, the producer of a famous talent show called Stars of America. He watched the little girl for a moment, whispering to one of his assistants. Then he walked toward her. "Hey, kid," he said, his tone half curious, half amused. "Where did you learn to sing like that?" Kesha clutched her guitar tightly. "My grandma taught me. She used to say music can make people forget they're sad." He chuckled, looking her over. Dirty clothes, bare feet, and eyes too old for her age. "How would you like to sing on TV?" Kesha blinked, unsure if she heard right. "TV?" "Yes, Stars of America. It's a big show. Millions of people watch. You could be famous." Her stomach growled. She hadn't eaten in 2 days. "If I sing well," she asked innocently, "will you give me a meal?" He laughed, a sharp, cold sound that bounced off the alley walls. "A meal? Sure, kid. You'll get your meal. Come to the studio tomorrow morning." He turned and walked away, still laughing. To him, this wasn't kindness. It was entertainment. He didn't see talent. He saw a joke, a street kid who could make the audience laugh. But Kesha didn't flinch. She looked down at her broken guitar, then up at the stars faintly visible through the smog. Something inside her whispered, "This will be the last time anyone looks down on me." She picked up her guitar and began walking toward the city lights, toward the place where the world would finally hear her voice.
The next morning, the largest television studio in Los Angeles buzzed with excitement. Bright lights, cameras, and chatter filled every corner. Children with perfect hair and expensive outfits rehearsed their songs while their parents sipped coffee and bragged about vocal coaches and private lessons. Amid the glitter and glamour, Kesha stood quietly near the back wall, clutching her broken guitar like a shield. Her clothes were clean, but simple: a donated shirt, patched jeans, and shoes 2 sizes too big. Every few minutes, someone walked by, staring at her as if she didn't belong. A woman wearing a headset approached her, clipboard in hand. "Sweetheart, are you lost?" she asked politely, though her tone carried something colder underneath. "No, ma'am," Kesha said softly. "I'm here to sing." The woman frowned, flipping through her papers. "Oh, you must be the special girl." The way she said special made Kesha's chest tighten. It wasn't admiration, it was pity, maybe even mockery. "Your performance will be last, very last. Just stay out of the way until then." Kesha nodded, sitting down quietly on the cold floor beside her guitar. From across the room, Richard Brennan, the same producer who'd found her, barked orders at his staff. "Make sure the cameras are ready for the finale," he said with a smirk. "When this kid starts singing, I want the audience laughing. It'll make great TV." He didn't notice that Kesha could hear every word. But the little girl didn't cry or protest. She simply tightened her grip on her guitar. She had learned long ago that silence could be more powerful than anger. While the other kids were pampered with snacks, bottled water, and makeup artists, Kesha watched quietly. A blonde girl named Ashley, about 12 years old, caught sight of her and tugged at her father's sleeve. "Dad, why is that girl here?" she whispered. Her father, a wealthy record executive, smiled down at her. "Don't worry about it, princess. She's here to show contrast, so you'll shine even brighter." The words hit Kesha like a slap. She turned her gaze away, blinking hard. Her grandmother's voice echoed in her memory. "Kesha, when the world tries to make you feel small, stand taller. And when they try to silence you, sing louder." That voice gave her strength, the same voice that had once sung gospel hymns in a tiny Harlem church where the choir lifted their hearts to heaven even when life on earth felt unbearable. As Kesha adjusted the loose strings on her guitar, one of the producers scoffed. "Hey, kid, do you even know a real song? You look like you only sing on street corners." Kesha looked up calmly. "I know a few." He laughed. Sure. Maybe some street music or rap, huh? Nothing fancy." But she smiled, that small, knowing smile that always made adults uneasy. "Can I ask you a question, sir?" "What?" he said, clearly impatient. "Do you play any instruments?" He frowned. "No, I don't need to play to recognize talent." "I understand perfectly," Kesha said, her voice calm but sharp. And she did understand. She saw through people easily now, the fake smiles, the condescending tones, the arrogance. Life on the streets had taught her more about human nature than any classroom could. As the day went on, she sat silently in a corner, rehearsing in her mind. Every insult, every dismissive look only made her more determined. In her worn backpack was a small yellowed envelope, the only thing she had left from her grandmother, Dorothy Williams. It carried words she had never forgotten and a secret that would soon turn this entire studio upside down. 3 years earlier, Kesha's world had been very different. She had lived with her grandmother, Dorothy Williams, in a small Harlem apartment filled with the smell of old hymnals, polished wood, and candlelight. Dorothy had been a pillar of strength, a gospel singer whose voice could make a whole congregation weep, and a mentor whose words carried wisdom far beyond her years. When Dorothy passed away from cancer, Kesha was left alone. The disease had taken her grandmother too soon, and life on the streets became a daily struggle. Cold nights, empty stomachs, and the constant reminder that the world could be cruel. But Dorothy had given her more than songs. She had given her a secret weapon, music as resistance. "Kesha, my granddaughter," Dorothy had said one evening, wrapping a small blanket around her. "When the world tries to put you down, you grow twice as big. And when they try to silence you, you sing 3 times as loud. Music is our shield, our voice, and our power. They can take your home, your money, even your dignity, but they can never take your song." Kesha had memorized every note her grandmother sang, every lesson about rhythm, pitch, and emotion. She had spent hours in subway stations, echoing tunnels and noisy street corners, practicing her voice and turning a broken guitar into an instrument that could sound like it belonged in a concert hall. Now, sitting backstage at Stars of America, Kesha touched the small yellowed envelope in her backpack. She had waited for the right moment to open it, the moment when everything she had learned could finally be used. Carefully, she pulled out the letter, her fingers trembling slightly. The paper smelled faintly of her grandmother's perfume. "Kesha, my dear, if you are reading this, you are ready. I knew the world would try to test you, but remember,
You are stronger than you think. I have left you a path to follow, one that will not ask for charity but will demand excellence. Show them what you are capable of. Always remember, your voice is more than music. It is truth, courage, and justice. Love, Grandma Dorothy. Kesha folded the letter and held it to her chest. Every humiliation she had faced, every mocking glance from strangers, every moment of hunger and fear had been training. She was ready. Across the room, the other children laughed, shared snacks, and rehearsed with microphones and flawless instruments. They didn't notice Kesha at first, a small, barefoot girl with a broken guitar. But she noticed them. Every gesture, every word, every ounce of arrogance became fuel. She remembered Dorothy's final words. They can try to humiliate you, Kesha, but excellence speaks louder than cruelty. And at that moment, Kesha made a silent vow. She wouldn't just survive this performance, she would transform it. Every note she sang, every chord she struck would carry not only her talent, but the legacy of her grandmother's love, wisdom, and courage. A subtle calm fell over her as she tuned the guitar. The world around her might see a small, vulnerable girl, but Kesha knew the truth. She was a storm waiting to unfold, a voice that could pierce even the thickest veil of arrogance. And soon, the world would hear it.
While the producers were busy plotting Kesha's humiliation, an older man quietly observed the backstage chaos. His hair was streaked with gray, gold-rimmed glasses perched on his nose, and his presence exuded calm authority. This was James Mitchell, the executive director of the television network. Unlike the other adults rushing around, James noticed details others overlooked. He saw the small girl sitting on the cold floor, clutching her broken guitar with an unwavering gaze. There was something familiar in the way she held herself, a dignity that didn't belong to someone her age, someone so poor, so underestimated. James approached cautiously, stopping a few feet away. "May I ask your full name?" he said softly, his voice gentle but carrying weight. "Kesha Dorothy Williams," she replied, deliberately emphasizing her middle name. For a moment, James froze. His eyes filled with tears, quickly hidden behind his glasses. "Dorothy Williams," he whispered under his breath. Kesha's grandmother, the woman who had guided him, mentored him, and believed in him when he was just a young man starting out in the entertainment industry, had a granddaughter. And she had been living on the streets, surviving alone while he had not even known she existed. "Where have you been all these years?" he asked, his voice thick with emotion. "On the streets, ever since she died," she replied simply, her eyes steady. James's heart ached with guilt. If he had known, if he had looked, he could have helped. But now, standing in front of him, was Dorothy's legacy. Not a plea for charity, but a child armed with the grandmother's wisdom, strength, and love. "Do you sing like her?" James asked, almost afraid of the answer. "She taught me everything I know," Kesha said softly, a quiet pride in her voice. James nodded, understanding immediately. Dorothy had always said that the best way to fight prejudice and cruelty was with excellence that could not be denied. Kesha leaned closer, her voice barely above a whisper. "Can I ask a favor?" "Anything," James said, his curiosity piqued. "Don't interfere," she said firmly. "Let them do exactly what they plan to do to me, but record everything, every reaction, every word. Trust me, it will be worth it." James hesitated, then smiled faintly. He could already feel the magnitude of what was about to happen. Across the room, Richard Brennan and the other producers were still plotting, laughing at the thought of humiliating a 9-year-old street girl on national television. They had no idea that everything they were doing was being watched, documented,
and about to backfire in a way they could never imagine. Kesha took a deep breath, closed her eyes, and whispered a silent prayer to her grandmother. "Thank you, Grandma. It's time to show the world everything you taught me." Her plan was simple yet powerful. Every sneer, every cruel word, every attempt at public humiliation would fuel her performance. And when she stepped onto the stage, she would turn their mockery into a testament of dignity, resilience, and raw talent, the kind that could silence even the loudest arrogance. She opened her backpack briefly and touched the yellowed letter again. Her grandmother's wisdom was no longer just words on paper. It had become a strategy, a weapon, and a legacy. The stage awaited. The audience, unaware of the storm about to unfold, murmured in anticipation. The other children, pampered and polished, believed they were the stars. But Kesha, barefoot, small, and underestimated, carried something far greater than any of them, a voice shaped by struggle, courage, and love. And soon, every single person in that auditorium, every viewer at home, would know it too.
The stage lights blazed, illuminating the center of the auditorium. The hum of cameras, murmurs from the audience, and the occasional squeak of a microphone filled the air. Over 500 people sat waiting, some curious, some skeptical, and some ready to laugh. Kesha stepped forward, her bare feet brushing the polished floor, her broken guitar strapped across her small frame. She paused for a moment, taking in the sea of expectant faces, and whispered to herself, "This is for you, Grandma. This is for every struggle, every hungry night, every cruel glance." Richard Brennan, backstage, grinned maliciously. "It's time to see this street girl embarrass herself," he sneered. "Activate the sound system. Let's make her performance a disaster." Ashley and the other privileged children giggled, whispering among themselves. They believed the humiliation would be complete, certain that the little girl with torn clothes and a battered guitar could never compete with polished voices and expensive training. Kesha adjusted her guitar and lifted it gently. She stepped closer to the microphone. "Hello, my name is Kesha Dorothy Williams. I'm 9 years old, and I want to dedicate this song to my grandmother, who taught me that music has no color or social class." A murmur spread through the audience. Something about her words carried authority beyond her age. She struck the first chord. The sound, even from the broken guitar, was perfect, pure, and resonant. Instantly, Richard signaled to his assistants. The sound system began to hiss and crackle, a deliberate attempt to sabotage her performance. The audience winced. Some laughed, assuming the girl had made a mistake. The producers smirked, convinced of their cleverness. But Kesha didn't falter. She stepped away from the microphone, her small frame centered under the spotlight, and began to sing without amplification. Her voice cut through the static, powerful and precise. Years of practice in subway stations, echoing tunnels, and street corners had honed her pitch, tone, and projection. Every note soared effortlessly, filling the auditorium, reaching the very back row with astonishing clarity. She sang Amazing Grace, but not as anyone had ever heard it before. Her rendition blended gospel roots with classical precision, every phrase imbued with emotion that made some in the audience clutch their chests in awe. Tears glimmered in the eyes of strangers, professionals, and even fellow contestants alike. Richard shouted, frantic, "Cut the broadcast! Turn it off!" But it was too late. James Mitchell had already instructed his team to record every moment, every reaction, every cruelty. What was meant to humiliate was now turning into a revelation. The audience fell silent, spellbound.
The laughter of the producers turned into shocked murmurs. The arrogance of the privileged children faltered as they watched a 9-year-old girl transform adversity into brilliance. By the time Kesha struck the final note, there were 3 long seconds of pure, reverent silence. And then, the auditorium erupted. Applause thundered. People rose to their feet, shouting, crying, cheering. Even Ashley and the other children backstage were motionless, their confidence shattered, replaced with awe and shame. Kesha lowered her guitar, a small, calm smile on her face. She had done more than sing. She had reclaimed her dignity, honored her grandmother, and shown the world that true talent cannot be measured by wealth, status, or appearances. Richard Brennan turned pale, realizing that his scheme had failed, and that he had underestimated not just a child, but a legacy. James Mitchell stepped onto the stage, microphone in hand, his voice steady yet emotional. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, "my name is James Mitchell, executive director of this network, and you have just witnessed something extraordinary." He paused, looking directly at Kesha. "This is Kesha Dorothy Williams, granddaughter of Dorothy Williams, one of the greatest gospel singers and composers in this country. Dorothy graduated from Juilliard in the 1960s, breaking barriers that should have been impossible. She was my mentor, my guide, and now I am honored to know her granddaughter." The audience gasped collectively. The truth of Kesha's heritage and the cruelty of the producer's plan hit them all at once. Richard Brennan turned pale, realizing that his scheme had failed and that he had underestimated not just a child, but a legacy. James continued, pointing directly at him. "Richard Brennan, your behavior, every attempt to humiliate this child has been recorded. You are terminated from this network. Let this be a lesson. Arrogance and cruelty never go unchallenged." The crowd erupted again, this time in outright applause for justice, not just talent. Kesha, calm and composed, stepped aside as James knelt beside her. "Kesha," he said gently, "your grandmother would be so proud, not just for your voice, but for the dignity, strength, and courage you showed today." Kesha smiled softly, her eyes bright with emotion. "Music," she said quietly, "is our secret weapon, and the best remedy for prejudice is excellence that cannot be denied." The phrase echoed through the auditorium, captured by cameras, broadcast to millions. It was a moment that would linger in the hearts of everyone who witnessed it, a reminder that underestimating someone based on their appearance, their background, or their circumstances is always a costly mistake.
The studio lights dimmed, leaving Kesha standing in the center of the stage, the echo of applause still vibrating in the walls. Cameras captured the scene, broadcasting it to millions of homes across the country. For a moment, the world seemed to pause. The small girl with the broken guitar had transformed the stage into a sanctuary of truth, courage, and music. She had taken every ounce of pain, hunger, and ridicule she had endured on the streets and turned it into something extraordinary. James Mitchell stood beside her, proud and moved. "Kesha," he said softly, "your grandmother changed my life, and today you've changed the lives of everyone here." Kesha looked up, imagining Dorothy's gentle smile, her hands resting lightly on her shoulders. "Grandma, we did it," she whispered silently. As the other children quietly approached, some shy, others still ashamed, Kesha noticed something remarkable. Instead of feeling victorious over them, she felt compassion. She remembered her grandmother's words. Use your talents not only to elevate yourself, but to lift others along the way. She stepped forward, extending a hand to Ashley. "It's okay," Kesha said softly. "We all have something to learn."
Ashley looked at her, eyes wide and trembling. She lowered her head and nodded, finally understanding that true greatness isn't measured by privilege or appearances. It's measured by heart, resilience, and courage. Outside the stage, the world was buzzing. News outlets replayed her performance, social media erupted with admiration, and millions of viewers shared one powerful message: never underestimate someone because of where they come from. Kesha returned to her backpack, now a symbol of her journey rather than a container of poverty. She opened it briefly and touched the yellowed letter from her grandmother. Her fingers traced the words one last time. "Your voice is your power. Use it well." And she had. Every note, every phrase, every chord had become a tribute not only to Dorothy Williams, but to every person who had ever been underestimated, overlooked, or dismissed. The network's executives were learning a lesson too. Richard Brennan had been removed from the building, his arrogance exposed. But Kesha's story reminded them and the entire country that true talent, true courage, and true dignity cannot be manufactured or bought. They are born in the heart, forged through struggle, and perfected through resilience. As the credits rolled, James and Kesha stood together on stage. The applause continued, echoing through the studio, reverberating far beyond it, into living rooms, into hearts, into the very soul of the nation. And in that moment, Kesha understood something profound. Her journey wasn't just about surviving the streets, or proving herself on a stage, or even winning applause. It was about legacy. The legacy her grandmother had passed down to her, and the one she would continue to pass on. That courage, love, and excellence can rise from even the harshest circumstances. Kesha Dorothy Williams, barefoot and brave, had rewritten the rules. She had shown the world that grit, grace, and talent are the true measure of greatness. And as the lights dimmed, she looked out toward the horizon, knowing that this was only the beginning. Her voice, her story, her legacy would echo forever.